Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. Now, Blue Sky Nurseries is a local nursery that sells only wholesale, so the plant material that they're producing and showing on the professional catalog is going to be available for distribution throughout Ontario. As a result, you'll have to check your local garden centers to see if they're carrying these particular plants. Now, one of the more, I would say, dependable plants in my garden, it's been there forever and ever, is Echinops. Now, this one is Vetch's Blue. It's a new one. It's a globe thistle, but don't take it that way because it's not as aggressive as thistles. It isn't shaped like a thistle. It's a globe. So it's quite a nice color. This one is a steel blue. The flowers are about 1 to 2 inches across. The coarse, spiny, dissected gray-green leaves are very pretty. Summer to fall time is when they bloom. They are going to be about 3 to 3.5 feet tall and just about as wide as well. They like the full sun. I do have to admit I have it in semi-shade, or short day actually, and that means that it's, not supposed to be that great. Well, it is. And as I said, it has been there for a very long time. Hardy to zone 3, which makes it very versatile. It looks like a thistle except for the flower shape. And the shape is such that it's different. And mine gets about 3 feet tall. So even though it's in a short day full sun, they actually do attain that height. Now there's another one. It's still an Echinops, but it's Arctic Glow. Now this one is got the same round thistle flowers, but it's white, and the stems on it are red. The leaves are quite a silvery and very dissected, with a little spine at the end of each of those little pieces of leaf at each end of the lobes on the leaves. It blooms in the summertime. It's 3 feet tall and about 1.5 feet wide. And this is about the size that mine is in that semi-shade. It does prefer full sun, and it's hardy to zone 3, which makes it quite nice. Now, Etium is not well known, and it's hardy to zone 4. This one is called Red Feathers. It's an upright flower spikes in a low mound of foliage, dark green leathery foliage. It reblooms starting in spring to summer to fall, which is a good idea. 1 to 2 feet tall, 1.5 feet wide, full sun, and hardy to zone 4. If you put this in your garden, there's going to be a lot of people going, huh? What's that? It is that distinctly different, and a lot of people do not have it. Epimedium has been around for a long time. There's a number of them. They're usually used as a ground cover or mixed in between other perennials in the perennial border. Usually towards the front because of their heights. The new one is Lilac Fairy. Now, Lilac Fairy is an amethyst purple flowers held above the foliage, and the leaves emerge in the spring as a bronzy red, then turn green in the summer, and back to a bronzy red in the fall. So you've got that change, you've got that interest. It blooms in mid to late spring. It's only 6 inches to a foot tall and a foot wide, part to full shade, zone 4. Another epimedium is Froenletten. Now, Latin is a butter yellow flowers, 3 inches, heart-shaped leaves. The leaves emerge bronze, marbled in the spring. In other words, they're green and sort of a bronze color. It blooms again in the fall. So you've got these 2 seasons of interest. The main flowering is in mid to late spring. It's only going to be half a foot to a foot tall and about a foot wide. And it's too like shade to full shade, but it's hardy only to zone 5. So it's not quite. Epimedium rubrum. This is a barren wort. It's an epimedium. It has cherry red flowers, bronze heart-shaped leaves, which turn red-brown in the fall and blooms in mid to late spring. 1 foot to 1.5 feet wide and about a foot tall. It's going to still like partial shade to full shade, and it's hardy to zone 4. So you've got these plants that are relatively hardy, and you can go and put them into shady conditions, get these extra flowers and shapes, and in the shade, because the foliage is very nice, even when it's not in bloom. Now they are getting a new maidenhair fern. This is a Himalayan maidenhair fern. It's hardy to zone 5. The fronds come up as a salmon flush in late winter, early spring, and mature to a fresh, bright green. They have wiry black stems. It has the broadly triangular fronds that are made up of small fan-like segments, so it does really look like a maidenhair fern. The small fan-like segments are about 6 to 8 inches tall and about 1 to 3 feet wide, so it can spread quite a distance. Partial to full shade, and it's hardy to zone 5, that's quite nice. There's another one on here that I do want to point this one out. It's Godzilla. Now, this is a giant Japanese painted fern. Very often in my gardens, the Japanese painted ferns stay small forever and then suddenly disappear one winter. So this one is hardy to zone 4. It's got silvery green foliage. It's got huge arching fronds. It's slow growth rate, so you have to be patient. But it's 3 feet tall and 4 to 6 feet wide. Partial to full shade, and again, hardy to zone 4. So tough, big, colorful, and it makes a good contrast to the other plants in your garden because of the silvery green fronds. And at the same time, it's big enough to be seen and not lost amongst the other plants in the garden. So it's a good one to try. The Gaillardias are an interesting group. I've always avoided them. I always found them to be boring. I don't know why, it's just me. But they're coming back more and more with the breeding, and I'm starting to sort of change my mind and sort of say, okay, well, it might have a spot in my garden. The new one for this coming year is Gaillardia Sunset Splash. Now this Gaillardia is a blanket flower. Now that's blanket flower is the common name for Gaillardia. It's an orange-red petals with yellow tips, burgundy-red cones, green compact foliage. It blooms in midsummer to fall, so in other words, when you're really out there. It's 1.5 feet tall and 1.5 feet wide. Full sun, though. Okay, and they do need full sun. Hardy to zone 5. Now, the geraniums, most people think of geraniums as the half-hardy perennials that we actually go and plant as annuals in our garden. This geranium is your dwarf cranespill. It is Jolly Jewel Red. So it's geranium Jolly Jewel Red. It has red flowers with dark purple centers. Right there, I like it. Low-growing clump form, which means it's out towards the edge of your perennial border. It blooms in late spring to fall. It's only 1 foot tall and 1 foot wide, but it does take full sun, and it will go into part shade. It is hardy to zone 3, which is really tough. I think I prefer this one in the sun. It also has a tendency to mix in well with other low-edging perennials and not get lost simply because of the bright red flowers with the purple centers. So it works for me. And then Jolly Jewel Salmon is basically the same thing. It's a geranium and it's a dwarf cranespill. Still 1 foot by 1 foot, full sun, par shade, but it's salmon coral flowers and aromatic when crushed. Now that's different. The blooms are April to July. It's aromatic. It's semi-evergreen, grayish-green foliage, which means that it's there a little bit in the winter, with interesting fall colors. So as a ground cover, it's going to be about 9 to 12 inches tall and 1.5 to 2 feet wide. I think you might just like this one. Actually, I really do. And then there's the Bigfoot cranespill. Now, Bigfoot's cranespill are pale pink, which makes it sort of like a lot of the cranespills. So this one I would hesitate to put it in, except it's a semi-evergreen. It's got the grayish foliage. It's got great fall colors. Its ground cover is about, and it's 1.5 to 2 feet wide and 1 foot tall. Hardy to zone 4, so try that as well. These work really well, and sometimes when they stretch and they grow between the other perennials, so they're sort of like a filler, and make it very effective and really fill in the areas between the other perennials, but also have a tendency to weave themselves around and through their neighbors. Geum Mai Tai. Now this is in the cocktail series of geums. Semi-double flowers with frilly petals that first open their apricot and then soften to a pale melon. Blooms from May to July, and it's going to be about 1 to 1.5 feet tall and about 12 inches wide. It's only hardy to zone 4, but it'll be an interesting color to mix in with the rest of the perennials. And being a semi-double, it's got some extra petals there, so it's a little thicker, a little nicer bloom on them as well. So nice. I really do like that one. Another geum, this is Triflorium. It's a reddish, pinkish, purple, nodding, globular flower that blooms in late spring. How do you like that description? It has seeds which form and styles elongate to form upright, feathery gray tails. It resembles a feather or a duster or a plume. It's 6 to 18 inches tall and it's a foot wide. It's hardy to zone 3. It's very unusual because of all the seed pods on it as well. One more, and we'll do Heliopsis. Heliopsis sunstruck, 2 inches large, golden yellow daisy flowers, variegated green and white foliage, which gives me hope. I really like variegated foliage. Blooms in summer to fall. It's 1 to 1.5 feet tall and 1 foot wide. It's full sun to part shade, hardy to zone 4. I think you're going to like this one simply because it's going to stand out in the garden even if it's not in bloom. I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.